Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Trent,
Yes.
tell me, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Trent Fancher, in case you didn't know. And I am a drummer, a dad, and a husband, a painter. Let's see, there's more.
Yeah.
Just an all-around creative guy, I guess. Studio owner.
Yeah. Awesome studio in here.
Thank
A
you.
lot of fun. So, how long have you been drumming?
Well, since diapers. That's
Yeah.
that's when it started.
Since they were invented, or since you were
Not
wearing them?
diapers
So-
invented, but
Okay.
definitely I had some diapers sometime in the mid 70s
Okay.
that I wore while I played drums. I do
Okay.
not do that anymore.
Okay. Gotcha.
After that one incident,
Yeah.
they were like, probably don't wear diapers anymore.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really come from a musical family. Like my parents aren't necessarily musicians. Well, they're not musicians, but they like music. My mom was a big Elvis fan, so there was always music. We were in church, so we heard a lot of music growing up. My brothers, though, picked up instruments, and then I have an older brother who sings really well. And they had bands, and so there was always drums in the house. So I was always around drums, and that's where I gravitated. And I would go play them in their band setup. When they were done rehearsing, I'd go down and play. And then I was 4 years old. I got my first real drum set. It was a CB 700 sparkly drum set. Don't know where that ended up. Somebody sold it. Parent probably was like, yeah, let's get this loud stuff out of the house. So they sold that. And then when I was about 10, I got my next. I picked this one out. I was like, I'm going to get this. Got a chrome Ludwig set. Yeah. And then it just kept on from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, why did you pick drums over a cool instrument like bass?
You mean one you could make money at? Yeah. Oh wait, you said bass. You didn't make money playing
Yeah,
bass.
we don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I was that cool, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing when you're in high school, you're in garage bands and things like that.
Yeah. So once my brothers figured out I could play, they started asking me to play in their bands. So that's kind of how it started. I didn't really have any bands my age, so I always kind of jumped into the older guys. My brother's about 5 years older than I am, so I was playing with college students in high school and junior high school and stuff like that. So, so we were doing that, a little more complex music, some Rush and Styx and stuff like that. That was kind of my brother's thing. So that was very much influential on me, what I heard. And so yeah, I didn't do the traditional school band. I didn't do marching band or anything like that. In fact, I went to a fine arts high school and learned timpani and vibraphone and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, were you planning a different career, or did you always wanted to be a drummer?
Always.
Yeah.
I remember my brother telling me, I think it was an Elton John album, for some reason, that's my memory. And he was like, you see the list of these guys' names on these? They're all like studio musicians, man, and they just work in the studio and play. And I thought, that sounds awesome. I didn't really know what that was, but I was like, they're playing music, and that sounds cool. I think I want to do that. And it's always been that. Yeah. Studio musician specifically.
Yeah.
So more so than even live. Because I thought when you do live shows, there are stage explosions. Kiss taught me there's a lot of fire. So that looked cool too, but
most of the time there's not supposed to be fire.
There's not supposed to be fire, yeah. Sometimes if there's fire on stage, there's a bigger problem.
Yeah. As an audio engineer, I've been on the wrong side of that sometimes. Yeah.
When y'all say fire, that's a bad.
So was there a moment where it kind of clicked that I can do this as a career? This is working?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, but to me, there was just no other option, really. It was just, no matter what, this is what I'm going to do. So decisions just became, okay, well, I don't know if I can do this from Birmingham. There are studios in Nashville, so maybe I go to Nashville. And then in Nashville, you're like, well, there's stuff in LA. Maybe we should go there. So you just like, you're chasing it, you know. And so we're still chasing it wherever we can go.
Yeah. So what was your first big gig where you said, oh, this is a great...
Let me think about that one. First great gig. Well, I'll say this. When I had my first studio experience, can I say the name of the
Sure.
place? Does it matter? Anything like that
Yeah,
matter to you?
yeah.
So, you know, we're in Birmingham, and there's Bates Brothers recording studio. And cool little place, and dear friends with those two brothers, Eric and Eugene.
Yeah.
And so my brother, I guess, booked the time. I never paid for it. So somebody did. I was assuming it was my brother. So we went and recorded some of our original music and printed cassette tapes of our finished album. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Like, I've been in a real studio, and that was just a fantastic experience. So to me, that was sort of the, like, okay, confirmation that this is what I've got to do, you know. And then I think when I was in high school, there was a big festival thing in town called City Stages that went on for a while. And so I played a few shows on some of those stages there, and with other bands, original bands, and also was like, yeah, this is very cool. So that was sort of that just lit the fire more, or added more fuel to the fire to I'm going to do this forever.
Yeah. So so I know you ended up at points touring and doing a Vegas residency.
Yeah.
It was a quick overview of some of that.
Yeah, so after high school, I went to Belmont in University in Nashville, and stayed in Nashville for a little while, and then decided that we would move to LA. I had very little success in Nashville, even though I knew everybody you should probably know to get some gigs, but it was not going fast enough, I guess. So we just packed up a U-Haul and moved out to LA, almost sight unseen. We flew out, found an apartment. And then, I think the cool story part of that is I joined the union when I got out there, and they send you a packet of bands that are working in town, alphabetical order. So it was just like, Jim Abrams. All right, this is his number, and he's got a band. So I, called him. I'm a drummer in town, whatever. Just going down the list. No one had called back, so I thought, I don't know what's going on. We'll see. I know, I get it. And somebody called, and they said we sent me the song. They emailed me the song list, and it was really long. All funk, disco, stuff that I had heard in my life, but I've never played this, so I don't know how intros are. How do we end? What is the story? So they said, don't worry about it. We'll guide you through the whole thing. We just got to have a drummer like in 2 days to do this gig. So we went and did that gig, and then I started working with them regularly, and it went so easily. Those guys were, the bass player was calling out the endings in the middle of the song, like, ba-da-da-da-da-da, that's what we're going to do. And you're like, oh, okay. And he would play it like beforehand, just to show me that's going to be the ending. And so he gave me that heads up. And so that was cool. And so that band had grown up with Wayne Brady in Universal when he was doing the stage shows at Universal before he became a famous guy. And so that was the connection to that. So he hired us, that band, to do a show to back him up once he was on Who's Line and that kind of thing. So he had a show, and we were the band, and that's pretty much how I got hooked up with him. So it was kind of like a very slow trajectory, and then suddenly it was like boom, and then he calls and says, hey, you want to go on the road? So it was a strange you know, you work for a while and you just go, and then it was just like a rocket ship took off. So
I know you said that you wanted to be a studio musician specifically.
Yeah.
And this was a road gig.
Yeah.
Was there a point where you tried to decide between the two, or did it just happen?
Yeah. I mean, everywhere we've lived, we've had some form of a studio, you know, small or large, you know. And so I always did things for myself, and there was many sessions in Nashville when I was there. In LA, there weren't as many sessions as there were these live shows. So I guess I kind of look at that as two different little portions of my career, where I got a little studio activity, and then now I got to do a lot of live stuff. And then it was just getting to the point where so many of us were just recording things in our home, because our home studios were getting better and better. This just wasn't as much, you know, call to go down there. And, you know, let's be honest, there's some A-listers that you can't knock out of their spots that they already have, you know. So that's the tough. It's never been easy, and it's not going to be easy ever. So
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it was a choice, but it was just like, well, this is the gig, so I'm going to do this. This is my gig. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, at what point through this whole thing did you start building your family, getting married?
Yeah, it was in, so I met my wife, Jennifer, in Nashville at Belmont. So she was a vocal major. So I knew that was going to be a good thing to meet a girl who was also a musician, so she would understand all the gear purchases without much pushback. You know, she was like, well, I'm a singer, I don't need any gear. But still, you still need a microphone, and you may need several. So,
right,
you know,
right.
you don't know how you're going to feel on a certain day, you know. So yeah, and so we're best friends for sure, and very eager and willing to move as much as we have, take up and head off into the unknown and see what happens. So it's been a great adventure so far. Owe her a lot. So when we were in LA, it was in the early 2000s. So 2003 came along, and we had our first son, Tryon. And that's when it started. Then you start going, kind of feel pretty far away from, she's from Kentucky, I'm from Alabama, so Nashville was a nice middle ground to see, you know, family. So once the kids were involved, it was like, it was a little more difficult to, you know, it was a little more difficult to justify living out there that far away. Because then we're like, now we have a child, now they have grandchildren, we want them to see them more often. So you start the next phase. What's the next phase going to be? So then it was talking to boss man and saying, Wayne, is it okay if we move? We fly everywhere anyway. So he said it would be fine if we moved. I wouldn't lose the gig if I moved back to Nashville.
Right.
And so that's what we did in 2005. And then from Nashville, Wayne started doing a Vegas residency at the Venetian, and so it started like 3 nights a week, then it went to 4 nights a week, and it went to 5 nights a week, and so I was flying back and forth every week, and I mean I had the same stewardesses, and like it was the same Southwest flight every time, so it was kind of comfortable, and I left all my stuff at the front desk, and you know, you know, so it was kind of nice. It was just fly in, fly out. But then it just, you know, more and more time away from the kids. So we ended up moving us all out to Vegas. And then the Vegas years started. And so after Wayne's show left Vegas, we did that for about 3 years, 3.5 years. I moved on to another show, like a big band. There was 11-piece orchestra and dancers and the whole 9 yards. So we did that at Planet Hollywood for another 3.5 years. And that show was 7 nights a week, 2 shows a night.
Oh.
So that one was a brutal run, and that wore me down to the point where I got to get out.
that makes 14
in
shows
this
a week.
position for 14 shows a week, it was like you could definitely start feeling the fatigue in the shoulders, and and in that time also had our second child in Nashville, Ty, and so now we had the 2 kids out in Vegas, and our parents were flying out a bunch to see us. So I mean, there's so many details in there, but yeah, that's a safe plot line right there.
Yeah. So when you were on the road touring, did your family ever come with you to some of the shows?
Sometimes. Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes. We did the thing where we would fly out maybe Thursday, maybe Friday, play Friday night, play Saturday night, and we were back home certainly by Sunday. With the kids being so small, it wasn't always possible. But sometimes the family would fly out, our parents, stay with the kids, and we would go, Most of the time, though, I was calling Jennifer from the road and saying, oh my gosh, we're in Tahoe and we're snowmobiling up in the mountains, and it's just the most fun I've ever had. Hey, what's going on at home? And she's like, well, Tryon just came down the stairs with a loaded diaper, and now there's a racing stripe down the carpet. And so tell me again, what are you doing now? And I was like, oh, just sitting in the hotel room, bored out of my mind, wishing I was at home, with you.
Of course.
So yeah, I started learning quick to, don't maybe see how she's doing first.
Right.
Before I start bragging about the free steak dinner, with some celebrity that showed up or whatever. It's like, I'll save that for later, and we'll just talk about what are the kids up to.
Right.
I'm not having any fun, honey. Seriously.
Yeah, but thankfully she was in the industry with you, so
Well,
she knew how.
she was, and actually she was hired to sing with Wayne before I was hired to play with him. So that's kind of an interesting. So she actually, how we met through that band, I said, but the job that came available was an assistant for Wayne. He needed an assistant. So the band, Jenny would come and sing and sit in with the band sometime. And she was doing some other assistant work in town as well as singing. And so she got the job to be Wayne's assistant. So I started just hanging out with Wayne playing Xbox while she worked in his office, because, we just kind of got along or whatever. So we were just kind of like, Xbox friends for a while. And we did that one gig, but, he had some different TV shows going on at the time. So he was hiring her to sing on the TV. Because once he found out, oh, you can sing and you're my assistant, well, then come and sing on the show. So she got to sing with Luther Vandross, which was her favorite vocalist of all time. She got to sing backups with him. And so it's just all this cool stuff that was happening out in LA, and it made us feel on top of the world. And but he did his a Vegas show, and he brought her to sing, and a couple other musicians from LA to play in the band. But everybody else, the drummer, bass player, horn section, they were all Vegas players. Well, I had heard her rehearsing this show, so I kind of knew the songs and everything. So I'm sitting there in the audience, and her parents had flown out to go. My daughter's singing for her first time in front of thousands in Vegas. What a huge moment. And I was so proud to be there watching her sing, but the whole time I'm sitting there going, this drummer's terrible. I mean, he's barely making it through all of these songs, and I can see Wayne like looking back at him going, what are you doing? And I was like, this is not good, but whatever, this is what it is. So after that first show, that was a Friday night show, Wayne's band leader, who is Peter Michael Escovedo, usually better known as Sheila E.'s brother.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but a monster percussion player and great drummer. Anyway, he makes a beeline for me after the show, and he goes, "Can you play this show?" And I went, "Yes." No hesitation, no, I don't know, maybe. I was like, yes, I can play this show. So Saturday night, I was in playing the show. So Jennifer and I got to play our first Vegas show together, And then that was kind of where Wayne said, well, he was the drummer in that other show we did, and now he's stepped in on this. And it was like 2 months later, he called and said, hey, let's take it on the road. So that was kind of how that started, But so yeah, it was very cool to do that with her because she definitely was Mom. I mean, she was like, I'm just going to be a mom and kind of step away from the stage. But she got to do a couple really cool things like that. And then on his TV show, she sang many times. I only got to play on his TV show one time. She got to sing many, many times. So that was cool for her. So she was enjoying that time as well.
So how many years total did you play with Wayne?
2002 till just about 2012. So about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that 10 years, what were some of the strangest or craziest things you saw?
Well, we didn't, the stories from the road that I had heard growing up listening to heavy metal, it was nothing like that at all. We were all kind of nerds, so I mentioned Xbox. It was like the show was over. Like the thing in his rider was like Krispy Kreme donuts and an Xbox. Was like that's what we want.
What Xbox games?
Mostly the Call of Duty style first-person shooter games. That was kind of our thing. So, because at his house, he would have us over for these big LAN parties with 10 or 15 computers all hooked on the same network, and we would just sit in his garage and just die laughing, playing all these games and shooting each other. And I would call knife fight on the helipad just in the room, and we'd all run to some helipad and go, stand in a circle and go, everybody got your knife? All right, 1, 2, 3, go, and just go to the center.
I assume in the game.
Yeah, in the game, not in real life.
Right,
this was definitely a ones and zeros kind of knife fight. So yeah, that just translated to the road. So we would literally leave the show and go back to his hotel room and just have Xbox controllers and food. That was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
And then if we would do the occasional, if we were somewhere where there was snowmobiling or paintball, then we would go do it in real life, and shoot each other with paintballs. So that was it was very nerdy and fun. And yes, there were some club moments. So he loved to dance and go to the club, which was not really the rest of the style of musicians that were involved. There was only 2 guys, me and a keyboard player. And then we had another comedian who was also from Alabama. So there was 2 Alabama guys on Wayne's payroll. But anyway, so we weren't much into dancing, but so we would call it playing golf with the boss. So we would just go and sit in the club while they danced and whatever. And then it was like, is it time for Xbox? Because we're ready. So yeah, it was pretty tame. I mean, there's many, crazy stories as far as meeting people, seeing people, maybe almost falling off of Joey Fatone's cliff diving situation he had in his backyard. I mean, there was some crazy moments like that, but most of the time it was pretty tame and nerdy, I'll say. Did I say nerdy enough?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know you've told me a story before about when you, if you needed your monitors changed.
Yeah. Yeah, there was stuff like, when you go to all these different venues, of course you have to interact with a new sound guy each time. We didn't have like a crew. It wasn't a very big crew. It was like our team of a couple musicians, the other comedian, and maybe some dancers, because Wayne would do some original music or he's a great dancer. So it was kind of that show, but wherever we landed, we had to just use whoever was the audio engineer at that particular facility. Sometimes you get a good one, and sometimes you don't get a good one. Well, and we're doing this funny comedy show, so I started to realize that, the monitor guy who is making sure I can hear everything to do my job is not paying attention to me going, I need a vocal up or whatever. And because he's watching Wayne and Jonathan crack up, and totally distracted. So I'm like waving doing everything I can to try to get, and I'm like, well, a drumstick? I don't know. I don't want to break his equipment or hit him. Mm-hmm. So I got this idea. I went and got some Nerf items, and I started using those, started with little Nerf balls. And I thought, well, at least that'll get his attention, but not break his equipment. So then I start tossing those over And it's, he's like watching and he just sees this thing bounce and freaks out. And I'm like, yes, this is me. I need that microphone. I can't hear him. So, and so I tried Nerf gun, just whatever I could do to get the guy's attention, but not be super harsh.
Yeah.
That was very effective. I recommend it.
Yeah.
How would you feel with a Nerf ball like just careening towards you and catch you by surprise? I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. I've been doing audio engineering for 20 years. I don't think I've ever been shot by a Nerf gun while mixing a band. That's
well, that's you didn't want to, because if something happened and I missed a cue or something, I would hear about it later.
Oh yeah.
Because you're gonna be, hey, I gave you that thing. You were supposed to start, or you're supposed to do the thing. And if I can't hear, then I can't do my job. And I was getting very frustrated just night after night seeing these guys. Like, I understand you're watching this show and it's funny. I'm laughing too. It wasn't the same show every night. And that's that was the big deal, because it was all improv. So, when I never know what he's going to say. And he may kick into a song like in the middle of something else out of nowhere. So I'm constantly having to be ready. I can't be distracted by anything. And when it's like, I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. Maybe he's saying, and then the song went like this, and I'm supposed to fill us in and do something. And so, if the sound guy, I didn't want to hate them too bad. So I thought, well, maybe a Nerf to the head would be at least the most gentle reminder.
We're used to abuse, and a Nerf gun is kind of on the easy side of that. So
But let me tell you this though, I knew that about sound engineers, and I was very sensitive to that information. So even though your star usually doesn't do this kind of thing, so I made sure that to go up to each sound guy and just say, hey, thanks for what you do. I know it's a tough job and it's a thankless job. And I always made a rapport with them. So there were some very cool guys out there and seemed to be appreciative of that. So I was on your side for sure.
Yeah.
Because I felt like,
it makes a difference.
Yeah,
it makes a big difference.
And I knew if I was nice to you, I'd probably get what I wanted.
Right.
And that's that's the trade-off, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm nice to you, then you'll be like, hey, and we know I came up and found out your name. What's your name?
Yeah.
And let's talk. And because we're going to be with you for a few hours here, so let's, even though I was, the drummer for Wayne Brady, I still felt like I'm just a musician, just a working musician that didn't go to my head. So when I saw these sound guys, I didn't think, oh, well, I'm better than you because I've got this big gig and whatever. I just felt like one of them, like, we're all on the same team. I want this to sound good. I want the audience to hear it, because they need to hear the comedy to laugh and respond,
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, let's just work together. So, yes, I have seen the sound guys get the brutal end, because I knew if Wayne's mic wasn't working, it wasn't going to be a Nerf situation. And, so I was like, well, if I can kind of soften the blow a little bit, that was kind of my goal. So, so I was very sensitive to the plight of the average sound man.
And we are very appreciative
you're
of that.
Yeah.
There are some people we work for that sometimes you mute people and you don't feel bad about it because of your experience before the gig. Yeah,
I think the worst one probably was when we did the Vegas residency, because there's the Venetian hires the sound people, so it was the same two guys. I'm still friends with them to this day, and they one of them still works there, or at least in Vegas as a sound engineer, and the other one does all these huge gigs on the road, with different folks. I can't keep up with them all. But we became friends, and, they took a lot of heat from the, mic number one,
Yeah.
And
it's the most important mic.
That's right. And so we were like, but, we spent a lot of time with them outside of Wayne being there, and so we became good friends. And, I know a little, not just drumming, I know a little bit about mic placement. So if I saw something off, I would, tell them, hey, I adjusted that floor tom mic. It was a little wonky or something. Just make sure things are, in order, And so, that that's kinship to me. That's a cool relationship, because, I want to be able to go, that guy doesn't hate me, so when I want a little more kick drum in my monitor or something, he'll give it to me happily, So it's very important. Yeah.
Definitely. So for other musicians who might be getting started in their career, they're looking at going on the road, or maybe they're on the road and getting ready to start a family while they're on the road. What are some tips, tricks, things to look out for when you have a wife and kid that are at home while you're...
Well, the way we can communicate now is much easier than even in the early 2000s. I mean, that was when text messages you paid for them. So you were like, well, I've got 10 left, so I got to use them real wisely, and stuff like, you paid for the minutes of your phone, and like, oh man, we're kind of getting low on the minutes, we got to stop calling so much. But now we're pretty much, there's no excuse at this point. So, just in any good marriage, whether you're on the road or working at an office somewhere, I mean, communication is the key. And I think, I was lucky in the fact that I did have a musician for a bride, and also I had a gig that I didn't get on a bus and go somewhere for 6 weeks. I mean, I was home Monday through Thursday and then kind of fly out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come back home. So I was around quite a bit. So in my case, I don't know what it's like to be gone for 6 weeks. Now we did some 2 to 3 week, out of the country gigs, Australia, South Africa, and stuff like that. In fact, I was in South Africa thinking this is really cool, and she was at home in Vegas, and it had snowed in Vegas. So she was experiencing this cool phenomenon that never happens there. And I was in South Africa where it was sunny and warm. It was like, this is so weird that you sending me pictures of snow, and I'm sending, pictures of little baby lions or something, But yeah, so, our thing was when we were together, we just hung out as much as we could, and so it probably means finding someone that's understanding of, because there, like I said earlier, there was just no other option than to just go for this. So that meant moving wherever the gig would take you, and being willing to do that. So.
And you didn't have family living next door to help with the kids.
That's exactly. Yeah, I mean, we were by ourselves, so we really just hunkered down together, and it was an ordeal to have a babysitter. So really, the concept of babysitter for us was pretty few and far between, because it was just like, have y'all been out in a while? No, it's been months since we've been anywhere together alone. So when a parent would fly out, it was like, here. And then we would go and enjoy Vegas or LA or something, But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. My wife and I have a pretty special relationship, and there's just never really been any trouble in that area. Other than, when the babies are real young and they're using the bathroom where they shouldn't, and you're, having real fun somewhere exotic, maybe don't start the conversation with, this is the coolest day of my life, you got to hear about this.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So in all your live and studio gigs and tours and all that stuff, what was your favorite experience ever?
Well, I have to go, again, growing up listening to more heavy metal and live albums and seeing the crowd and the stage explosions and whatnot, that was sort of my expectation. The bar was set a little high, thanks Gene Simmons. But I wish I could remember the venue, but it was a 10,000 seat venue on a college campus. And I don't remember where this was. And we were in the round, so they had built just a square stage. They say the round, they just mean people are all around you.
Right.
And so the stage is square in the middle of probably the basketball floor. And then it's just they didn't block off anything. Everybody's sitting. There's 10,000 people in there. And at the time, Wayne was doing a kind of a parody improv for Billie Jean. So the lights went out, and I'm just supposed to start. And the whole place erupted, and because they instantly knew what this song was. They just knew it, just based on, before the keyboard, before anything came in. And I remember thinking that is like the coolest feeling. Because, they're there to see Wayne. They're not there to see me. Right. They don't know who I am. I'm just a backing guy. But that's like, that was my moment to like, and to feel the power of a simple but effective drum groove. Not flashy, nothing, That's like the first beat anybody ever learns, And it erupted an entire arena full of people on the same page, like, oh, love that song, And that was when I don't know, one of those moments where you really felt the power of music, Because normally it was, well, Wayne's on stage, yay! Musicians come on stage, we're still talking, right. Wayne comes, hey, and that's fine. He's the star. That's fine. Yeah. I'm used to that. So yeah, that was definitely a poignant moment to have that experience. That makes you want it. Let's do this again, because that didn't happen all the time. It just happened at that one, one location, and people applaud, and it feels nice, But it was one of those moments that, normally it was all of us together at one time and people would applaud that or something. So to have like, this one singular moment, that was very cool. Yeah. Yeah.
But do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share? Thoughts, experiences?
Well, I usually tell other musicians who are up and coming or trying to figure this thing out, because it's very difficult. You hear the things like it's who you know, not so much what you know, although it's kind of a combination. But I understand what they mean by that, and that you meet the right. You go to to move to LA, and you call a sheet full of people, and one of them happens to call you back. And you take the gig, even though it's $50 for like 4 or 5 hours till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, for a really terrible bar in somewhere you've never heard of, but they know somebody because they play with other musicians. Yeah. And how do you navigate? How do you figure that? Because usually you think, I'm going to go play in a smoky bar, especially at that time when you could smoke indoors. And play till 3 in the morning. For $50, I'm not going to do that, But if you didn't, then you didn't meet the person who got you the other gig. That was a lot more than $50 a gig, So I kind of say it is who you know. It's a good bit of what you know, because then you got to prove that you can do the job. But I think I call it the art of saying yes, like learning when to say yes, when to say no. Because you can do those bar gigs for very little money and never go anywhere and get stuck there. So there is some kind of balance you've got to figure out to go, well, let me do that. Don't say no to everything because you think you're on some other plane than everyone else. So sometimes do the grunt gigs and see what happens. Because, there could be one other musician there that's connected to another musician, and that's how it all comes together, And the other thing that everybody talks about that I agree with is to be a good hang, Be pleasant, show up, be on time. That was, I noticed that from working in those situations. When someone was late to the lobby, it was not looked upon well. If somebody wasn't nice to each other, that was also, people come like, you're out all the time. So those things you hear about being nice to work with and easy to work with and not thinking you're full of yourself or something. That's the thing. I'm a drummer who can play, easy things or more difficult things. And you got to know when to choose which one to do. So if it's Billie Jean, you should just play Billie Jean. You should not add anything else to it. Just play what that is. And guess what? Everyone recognizes that and appreciates it. So there's too many musicians out there who are look at me, look at me, look at me, and whatever they're doing. And learning how to get into a situation and play what that situation needs is, I think you'll work more if you have that attitude.
Yeah, definitely.
Not about you. It's about the situation, or it's about that song, or it's about that vocal, or whatever, whatever you're working with. Now, if you're working with some jazz fusion band, then let it rip.
Right.
That's the expectation, but don't let it rip in Billie Jean.
Right. But if you're looking to make a career out of it, jazz fusion may not.
That's the thing. Yeah, when you're letting it rip, it's usually way less money. When you're playing, the simple stuff, the money seems to go higher. So you get used to that.
If you're okay with eating ramen noodles the rest of your life, then
but playing the coolest 7/8 drum figure you've ever come up with, and that might be your thing, but. My thing was I like the money part of it too, and I don't mind playing that simple beat, because if you can, I mean, think about how many songs start like that.
Oh,
too, you know what I mean? So how do you know it's Billie Jean other than when you hear the recording Billie Jean? But you just hear this drum kit in this arena play that beat. How did they know it was, you know what I mean? Like that was wow, they instinctively knew, like that's Billie Jean. And then of course, Wayne shows up with the wig on and the hat and does all the dance moves and then singing like him and making up lyrics, which was different every night.
Yeah.
But there's power and simplicity in that way, because that is a universal language, I mean, that's what they say about music, right?
Yeah.
You can play it here, there, everywhere, and people go, oh yeah, I understand that,
Yeah.
And I think as musicians, we look at other musicians who can rip it and go, oh my gosh, they are so good. I can't play like that. But there's something to be said about the guy who can sit down and just lay down a smooth track that doesn't move tempo-wise and just locks it in. And just 2 and 4 on the snare, that's great feeling right there. And if you know that's a great feeling when you can do that. So yeah.
Did he ever make you dance on stage with him?
No. Well, there was a lot of that in sound checks, of course.
Okay.
Because being known for not being a dancer, somehow I can move my arms and legs independently as long as I'm sitting on something. I can do some things. I stand up, gravity shifts, then it's bad. I can't move my body in any kind of normal way. To add to the comedy of the show, I would, at least come out during sound check and do their dance moves for them, because we'd be sound checking, the drums would just stop. The other music kept going, and then I'm like running out from the side and joining in the chorus of dancers, and everybody laughs. But one thing I did in the show was I would call, like you've seen, Drew Carey on the show or something, call the games, and so a lot of times, and I think that was good being a drummer, knowing timing and stuff like that, where I could see when a scene was slowing down and I'll call a new thing. So if it was movie style, say kung fu, and then they'd be doing this kung fu thing, okay, horror, and I would call those games out. And so there was a rhythm to that as well, that was entrusted to me to do. So it felt like a bigger part of the show, because that was also, I was I could play drums and usually fly under the radar because I could just do my job. But if I called something that they didn't want to do at that time, and we would do that forward reverse, like I was a remote. And so they would do some kind of roll on stage, and then oh, reverse. And now they have to roll backwards out of it. And then it was forward, and then they roll again, and you're reverse. And then you just get them stuck in that thing. And you do that 3 or 4 times, and then they're looking at you going, I hate you. Don't you dare call forward, or then it would be fast forward or slow motion or something,
Yeah.
And so there was always ways to mess with him. But then there would be those times where after the show it was like, I really wasn't in the mood tonight to do that many times, so don't do that every time. And you're like, well, I can't always tell what mood you're going to be in, but I understand.
Yeah.
The audience was loving it. I might point out.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But the audience didn't see the talking to we sometimes got backstage, So
Yeah.
But,
Well, I appreciate you talking with me.
well, thanks for coming here.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That was a lot of fun.
All right.
So I want to hear more about Joey Fatone.
This could be the bonus extra.
I was like, wait, did we just skip past that part? Where he
Well,
was
and sometimes I wonder, like, I mean, NSYNC's not as big a thing anymore. So
it'll
do
always be huge.
do people even know who Joey Fatone is? So.
Because I think he's coming back. He started to do shows.
Okay, so first off, I'm 35.
Okay.
NSYNC was a big deal.
Okay. So,
And so was
I feel like we were in Washington, D.C., and it was probably the pop tour, I would imagine, the NSYNC. I think if that was their record, if that was the name of their record, or that was the hit song at the time, Dirty Pop, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Being from, Wayne's from Orlando, there's your NSYNC connection. So he knew Justin and all of them, and so we had gone to see their show, and we just kind of got ushered in a little side door or whatever, and they all come over and talk to us, but they're all dressed and got their headset mics on. They're ready to go. So it's like, hey, and gone. So then we go watch the show, and it's great. And they've got these, platforms that come out over the audience. And so it was really neat to just see the show. I think it was sometime later we were in Florida, and wherever we were, it was near Joey Fatone's house. And so we went to his house. And so when we walked through the door, Lance Bass is sitting on the couch, and of course we're like, do y'all guys just hang out? I mean, so we're in this giant mansion in Florida, and he's just showing us around, and he's got guitars, and he's got the Gene Simmons Axe bass with a personal, hey Joey, Gene, here's a bass for you.
Seems like the most fun.
Yeah, and so he took us out to his backyard, which went up to a lake, and so he had this ginormous pool area, and he had a literal rock cliff diving. It wasn't a real rock. It was however they build it at, Six Flags or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but it was underneath. You could swim into it, and there was like a bar and lights. But then you could climb up it and dive into the deep end of the pool. So he took us up there, and we're all in our normal clothes. We're not there to swim. He's just showing it to us. So I'm standing up there, and up there there's these little holes like you would see in a real rock. There'd be little divots and things, and it all had like water in it. But I can't see. It's kind of dark up there. It's at night. We're there at night, and you can stand up there and look out over the lake. It was beautiful, and then look down. So we're all right there at the edge. So I turned to walk out because we're leaving, and I stepped down in one of those holes that are filled with water. So my shoe just goes straight into this big puddle of water up to my ankle, which then makes me trip or lose my balance because the floor is uneven, and I'm leaning back heading towards the pool. So Fatone grabs me, saves me, and like pulls me in like super tight. And he's like, whoa! And I was like, man, I almost lost it. So anyway, I always say Joey Fatone saved my life.
That is the best thing I've ever heard.